Do you know that some kids on the autism spectrum repeat words or phrases? Do you want to know why? And probably how to help reduce this? I'm sure your answer is yes. Hello, beautiful people. My name is Esther Emmanuel, and I'm your favorite special need coach. You're welcome to my channel. Today, we'll be discussing what we call echolalia in kids with autism. Before we get into today's business, I'll be right back. So today, let's understand what echolalia is and ways to help. Now, echolalia is defined as repeated words, phrases, or sentences. Many kids that are diagnosed with autism repeat words or phrases or sentences they hear from familiar people around them, or probably from their favorite TV show, or from a show or cartoon or something that they've watched. They keep repeating and repeating this word. So this is what we call echolalia. Echolalia can be delayed or can be an immediate echolalia. When a child repeats words immediately after it's been said, okay, we call that immediate echolalia. So, for instance, if you say, "How are you?" instead of the child should respond with the appropriate answer and say, "I'm fine, thank you." The child can say, "How are you?" as well. So, "How are you? How are you?" So that is an immediate echolalia. Or you say, "What is your name?" and the child will say, "What is your name?" So instead of responding, the child repeats the phrase or the question, the sentence that's you just heard. Okay, so that's immediate echolalia. Delayed echolalia is when the child say the word or a phrase that they've heard later than when they heard it. Okay, so for instance, the child watched a show and then later the child starts saying one of the lines of the show. I know a child that loves to watch Mickey Mouse a lot, and then later after you might just go and repeat, "This is Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, this is Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, this is Mickey Mouse Clubhouse," just that phrase, just "This is Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, this is Mickey Mouse Clubhouse." That's all. The child on the autism spectrum just keep repeating. So that's what we call delayed echolalia. Okay, so now let's talk about reasons why kids on the autism spectrum uses echolalia in their speech pattern. So the first reason why kids on the autism spectrum engage in echolalia is that they use it as self-stimulation. We call that stimming, okay? And so they engage in echolalia speech pattern to calm themselves down from sensory overload. Stimming is a way it's like a calming process for kids on the autism spectrum. They use stimming to calm themselves down from any sensory overload. Okay, so sometimes they use echolalia to calm themselves down. So it's some of a self-stimulating thing. So that's why sometimes this echolalia thing, it's not like they say something that makes sense or it's a response to something around them or someone talking around them. It's more like a random word or phrase, over and over again, and it tends towards like an involuntary vocal coming out, just something involuntary, just coming out. So it's more like an involuntary action. That's just it. So yeah, so they use it to self-stimulate. So that's the first reason for self-stimulation. Now, here's another reason. Most kids on the autism spectrum find it difficult to generate their own words, okay? Typical people generate words. If you just ask them something, they come up with words to answer. But it's quite difficult for a person on the autism spectrum to generate their own words. So instead of them just answering you with their own words, they repeat what you say, okay? But it's a form of communication. They're trying to communicate to you. They're actually trying to answer your question, but because they can't generate their own words, it's difficult. So the available words around them is just the one they heard you say. So they repeat it. So that's most times that happens with immediate echolalia. So that's another reason why kids on the autism spectrum involve themselves or engages in echolalia. So you will see that it's also a form of communication. With this knowledge, okay, how do I intervene? How do I help? This echolalia that my child is engaging in, is it for self-stimulation or is it to communicate? These reasons are very important for you to figure out. So that's way you would know how to intervene and how to help. Okay, so now let's go into the meat of this discussion. Let's know how to reduce echolalia in kids with autism. I'm going to share share with you two of my main strategy. And trust me, it's working and it's working for me. Go and try it and put it at the comment section and let me know what you think about it. I'm sure you're going to tell me this works as well. Now, the first strategy is to model correct language. Now, you know that one of the reasons why they engage in echolalia is that they cannot generate their own words. So instead of saying words that sound like sometimes a question, just model a word that sounds more like an appropriate response. So, for instance, you say, "Are you ready for lunch?" And then they will tell you, "Are you ready for lunch?" Why not just say lunchtime? Okay, so when you hear lunchtime and they repeat lunchtime, it sounds more appropriate than them repeating this question. Do you understand? So do more of a response kind of talking around them than a question or something above their head. Do you get? So, oh, are you ready for bedtime? Trust me, you're going to hear, "Are you ready for bedtime?" But it's more appropriate to say, "Time for bed, time for bed, time for bed." And then they say, "Yeah, time for bed, time for bed." Okay, so that's the first strategy. Just model with the appropriate response around them. Okay, eat food, eat food, eat food, rather than say, "Do you want to eat?" Now, for a child that engages in echolalia would be hard. It's not easy. But then with that, you are modeling how to talk, how to respond to questions without them repeating the question you have. So that's one way to reduce echolalia. Also, try and reduce pronouns when you're talking to kids of the autism spectrum. Pronouns can be confusing. Yes, even adults, persons living with autism might mix he, she, it, So rather use names. Okay. Oh, Esther's book. This is Esther's book. Okay. This is Desmond's plate. Okay, just say this is her plate. Give her her shoe. That is confusing when you're talking. So around them when you're talking, use nouns. Okay, use names rather than pronouns. So lastly, here is also one strategy I use to reduce echolalia. I give them what I call verbal expectation. Okay, and of course, verbal expectation works hand in hand with verbal imitation. Sometimes when children with echolalia repeat what you say, you also teach them the appropriate response. So when you ask them questions like, "How are you?" Okay, the response is, "I'm fine, thank you." So they repeat, "How are you?" Then you also respond and say, "I'm fine, thank you." And they say, "I'm fine, thank you." Now, when you do that over and over again, ask them to repeat, "I'm fine, thank you." "How are you? How are you?" "I'm fine, thank you." "I'm fine, thank you." Do you understand the back and forth? Now, after a while, you stop. So do we understand the back and forth? So if I ask the question again, I am not going to give the response as well for them to repeat. I am going to give a verbal prompt because they have had me, set the response to the question over and over again. So I expect them to repeat the answer they have heard, just like how they repeat other things. So if I say, "How are you?" "I am," then I expect them to say, "Fine, thank you," because they have heard it before. Do you understand? So you keep giving that verbal expectation of them, before you know it, they will fill in the gap. Sometimes it might take time. Just hold on, but make sure your facial expression gives that, like you're expecting them to actually, you know, I always say when you're a therapist, you always carry these animated faces, especially when you're dealing with younger kids. Yeah, so that's what I use, right? That's what I use for to just break up that. So before you know it, the more you give that verbal expectation, the more they develop their own words, the more they just give the appropriate response. So instead of them repeating what you say, they just respond. Okay, but you would have taught them the response ahead. Okay, so when they hear the question, they know the response to give. It works for me every time. So once I'm asking a child on the autism spectrum a question, they will not repeat the question if they do echolalia as a speech pattern. They'll rather give me the response because I had taught them the response, so they know the expected answer. Do you understand? That works every time. It works every time. So I want you to try it. and tell me at the comment section. Thank you so much for following me. Thank you so much for joining today's discussion. If you have any question or comments, I want to see it down below at the comment section. Thank you so much. Yes, watch out for our next live. And go back to our videos. I'm sure you'll learn a lot from the video I've dropped on this channel. I'm your favorite special need coach right here. So just keep watching and keep liking, keep sharing, and please subscribe. Thank you so much for today. We're going to meet again next week. And bye for now.